This is what I ate back in 2023 to go from skinny fat to shredded and achieve the Brad Pitt physique from Fight Club. I lost 18 pounds and 8% body fat in just 10 weeks. And this was the first time in my life where I had my nutrition dialed in and I actually started to see some results. And I've been lean ever since. In this video, I'll go over the exact meal plan that I used, how to create your own, and whether I would make any changes to it now to make it even better. I'll also speak about the methods that I use to make adherence effortless, and I'll talk about some of the equipment and the apps that I used, which really helped me out. So I'm going to break this video down into 3 points, and the first one being breaking the fast. Eating while cutting is like hiring a famous band to play first thing in the morning at a festival. It's a waste of budget and no one's going to see it. So why not save that extra budget and go for a big headline act when the people are actually there? And how this relates to diet is that I much preferred saving calories from breakfast so that I can have a big satiating dinner when I was actually hungry. I want to make an important differentiation between breakfast and break fast. They're two different things. Break fast, which is where the original word for breakfast came from, just means your first meal of the day. It just means you are breaking your fast after waking up. And that can be at any time of the day. It could be, after you wake up, or it could be at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So here the timing doesn't matter. Whereas breakfast in the modern sense of the word was pretty much created by Kellogg's in the 20th century to try and sell you like cereals and cornflakes. And that's what most people think of when they think of breakfast is basically having a meal like as soon as you wake up. And it would usually be like cereal or toast or something very like savory. So I decided to skip that and I would instead eat around like 4 or 5 hours after waking up. And I found that whether I had breakfast or not, I was just as hungry when it came to lunchtime. So why not save those calories for later in the day? And you might be thinking, you know, didn't I get hungry or have not much energy if I was skipping breakfast? Well, there were two things that I did to make it super easy. The first one was I bought some caffeine tablets. There were these ones right here called Pro Plus. So each one of these tablets has 50 milligrams of caffeine in them. And I would have usually like 2 to 8 of these a day. I don't recommend having more than like 400 milligrams of caffeine because it might affect your sleep later on. And the second thing I did was I drank sparkling water and I'd usually just buy a bottle, keep it at work, and I'd aim to have around like 750 mil. And I had sparkling in particular because I feel like it was more like satiating, more filling. So with those two things, it made the first fast of the day, like the 4 or 5 hours, it made it really effortless. So what was it that I actually ate to break the fast? Well, there are a few criteria I was looking for. I wanted it to be high protein, at least like 40 grams. I wanted it to be tasty, like I enjoyed eating it and look forward to having it every day. And I also wanted it to be super convenient as well. I didn't want it to be like really complicated and needing to like cook a bunch of stuff. So I basically created my zero prep breakfast. And this consisted of like a high protein skyr yogurt. It's kind of like just a Greek yogurt with extra protein. It was low fat as well. And you can get flavored and unflavored ones. And basically, what I do to boost the protein is I literally peel the lid off, have a few mouthfuls of the yogurt to make room for a scoop of protein powder. And then I put that in, and that would give an extra 20 grams of protein. And you can either go for a flavored protein yogurt and then have like flavored or unflavored bean powder, or you can just get the like no sugar, unflavored protein yogurt and then add the flavor from your protein. My favorite is usually salted caramel or vanilla, and just pick a flavor that you like and play around with different yogurt and protein combinations. And I'd also have some fruit with that, usually like berries, whether that be blueberries or strawberries. And I'd also chuck in there like a protein bar as well. So it was literally like 80 grams of protein probably in total. And, it was way under 1,000 calories as well. And I like to have a calorie to protein ratio of around like 10%, meaning that if I'm having 800 calories to break my fast, I'd like usually about 80 grams of protein, ideally. So moving on to meal two, which for me was dinner. Now, I personally preferred just having 2 meals per day. It meant just less prep, less cooking, and less time eating as well. So I basically had a few go-to meals on rotation. Around about this time, I read a book by Tim Ferriss called The 4 Hour Body. And in it, he recommends the slow carb diet, which is basically only consuming slow releasing carbs like beans and legumes and that kind of thing, and avoiding any carb that can be or is white, such as like bread, rice, pasta, potatoes. So I got the idea for this recipe from his book, and he was a big advocate of black beans. And he had like this perfect breakfast in there, and it was basically a omelette with black beans and spinach. So I did exactly that. Now, I also added cheese to it to just make the omelette a bit tastier. I thought it was a bit bland without the eggs. And, cheese was actually not allowed on this particular diet, but for adherence reasons, I decided to add it in, and it was super quick to make at home. But if I needed to take it anywhere, I usually wouldn't like reheat the omelette. So what I did instead was I created another meal, which is basically some kind of ground meat or mince meat, as I call it, either turkey or beef usually. And I'd basically create big batches of them, and I would have this big portion of minced meat, and then I would add the black beans and the spinach and just kind of like mix it all up into one. And it was super easy to bulk cook, and I can like take it to work. Or in the evening, instead of having to cook again, I could just heat it up and it would be ready to go. And it was super convenient. And it was really high protein, and it had that slow releasing carb as well. So it was super filling, and I added like bolognese sauce to it as well. It's almost like spaghetti bolognese, but instead of having spaghetti, I'd have black beans instead. And the proportions as well it was a lot more like ground beef than you would usually have on a spaghetti bolognese portion. The ground beef was like super easy to prepare, and the black beans I just pour half a can into a microwavable container, cover it up with water, put it in the microwave for like a minute and a half, and then stir it and then put it in for another like minute, and it was just super easy. And then I'll just pour it into like the big pot where the mince was cooking. My second go-to dinner is chicken fajitas, and it's been an absolute go-to ever since I first moved to uni at age 18 and suddenly had to start cooking for myself. And even I, with no cooking experience, was able to make it like pretty easily, and the macros are great as well. So I basically just cooked out some chicken breasts. Just pick any veg you like, and then I just have it in a wrap with like the old El Paso seasoning, and yeah, just any veg that I liked really, usually like cucumber or spinach. And then I was add mayonnaise as well. And again, it's super easy to bulk cook. You can just cram your pot with as much, or pan with as much chicken as you can fit in. And then you can just put it into microwave containers and keep it in the fridge. And if you prefer a diet that is lower in fat, then chicken breast is an absolute cheat code. It's such high protein for not many calories. Both of these meals were cooked in extra virgin olive oil, and extra virgin just means that it's not been as processed, which is better. And don't forget to include oils on your calorie totals. You can scan them on MyFitnessPal, and you can just do it by like the teaspoon or tablespoon. But those calories can really add up, so make sure you don't forget. Next, I'm going to talk about adherence. Like, how did I stay motivated? Like, what was it that actually changed this time? And made me able to see out the whole thing. So the first thing was that I weighed myself every morning. And by tracking it and putting it into a nice Google sheet, I could visualize my progress. And it really just turned into a game. And that was what was motivating was, all right, I need to have a good weigh-in like tomorrow morning. And if I go off track and have this Domino's pizza, then I know that tomorrow, then my weigh-in is not going to be so good. So that was kind of like the motivation for me. The next thing I did was that I only ate foods I like. I think it's such a common misconception that you have to eat foods that you don't like in order to get in shape. And it's just not the case. And if you're eating stuff you don't like, then it's going to be so much harder to actually stick to. Next is just eating the same things every day. I basically had a few meals like on rotation and they were all like preloaded onto MyFitnessPal. So I didn't have to count the calories every day. If you do prefer some variety in your meals, then I do recommend counting your calories to make sure that you're still in that calorie deficit needed to basically get shredded. But I personally find it much easier to just have the same things and not have to worry about counting it every day. So a key purchase that I made was some food scales. And this is basically to measure out each ingredient so that you can accurately track it. And I would use MyFitnessPal. At the time, I had the pro version, which was around like £16 or like $20 per month. But honestly, eventually I just went back to the free version and it was totally fine. Another app I used was the Renfo app, and this was the app that came with my smart scales. So whatever kind of body composition scales that you get, there will be a matching app. The final thing that helped me massively with adherence was cutting alcohol. And from doing some research, I found that Brad Pitt, or the filming of Fight Club and the preparation, he didn't have any alcohol at all. And I can see why, because between 2022 and 2023, I cut my alcohol intake by probably 98 or 99%. And it was honestly such a game changer because it's not just like the getting drunk that affects your nutrition. It's the junk food the day after, the feeling hungover, lack of willpower. You don't go to the gym. So just by getting rid of that one habit, it can really also filter out into other bad habits. So I highly recommend reducing, ideally eliminating uh, alcohol intake just for like a 12-week period where you're trying to shred down. So what would I change? I've come up with four things that I would change if I was to go through this process again. The first one is I would try and have less sugar, and that would basically come in the form of the Skyr protein yogurt. I would go for an unflavored version rather than flavored because they have more sugar in. And the reason I'd cut the sugar is because when you have sugar, it basically increases a hormone called insulin. And when your insulin is high, it blocks another hormone called leptin. And leptin is essentially your satiety hormone. It's the hormone that tells your body that it's full and to stop eating. So if you have sugar, basically that signal to your brain to stop eating will be blocked. And if you're in the calorie deficit still and you're eating sugar, then that's absolutely fine. It'd be far easier if I had less sugar. And it's important to know the difference between hunger and a craving. Like, how often do you have a chocolate bar? You get the craving for it, and then you have it, and then like you feel full. Like you never do when you have like ultra processed, high sugar foods. It's feeding more of a craving rather than hunger. And it's important to distinguish between the two. So the next thing I would change is I would have less protein. I think on this particular meal plan, I had far more protein than I needed. And, I was probably like high 70s kilos, maybe like 78 kilos when I was starting this. And so I probably only need around 120 to 140 grams of protein tops. And I was having much more than that. And I would instead replace that with carbs and fats. So the third thing that I would change is I would keep calories higher at the start and slowly go down. And I've got a clip here from the Fight Club Physique program on exactly how I would adjust the calories throughout the 12-week period. So for me, at 172 pounds, my calorie intake each week would look something like this. And this is assuming I want to lose 1% of body weight per week, which is going to be our target. So week one, 172 pounds. And we want the first week to be at maintenance. So times that by 15. And then we slowly go down like 14, 13, 12. And then we only want 1 or 2 weeks at the 11 multiplier because you'll start to feel kind of hungry at that point. And if there is a week where you don't lose enough weight, go down 1 multiplier the next week. And the final thing that I would change is that I was cutting for far too long. I think it's only good to be in a calorie deficit for, you know, a maximum of like 3 months probably, because eventually your metabolism slows down and your body will go into kind of like starvation mode and it won't want to shift any more fat. So I was pretty much in a calorie deficit for probably like 6 months. And it just got to a point where I was dropping calories and I wasn't seeing any movement on the scale. And I I was feeling so hungry all the time. So for every 3 months, what I would do is I would have like around a month at maintenance to get that metabolism back up, give your body the energy it needs. And then once you go back into the deficit, then you can start making progress again. But hopefully the transformation will be achieved in that first 12-week period. So this won't matter at all. If you like this video, then you might also like this video on the exact training program that I use to achieve the Brad Pitt physique. So I'll see you there.